Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the latest installment of the Straight Shootin' series. We are joined today by Mike Rotunda. Thank you very much for joining us.
I'm glad to be here.
The date is October 13th, 2004, and we're going to take a look at your entire career. So we might as well start out with your background at Syracuse. You were playing football there and you went over to wrestling. How come you went over to wrestling?
Well, actually, before I went to Syracuse, I got recruited to do both separately by the wrestling program and also by a football program, and I decided to go to Syracuse on a football scholarship, and I wasn't going to wrestle. And it just so happened after my first year, after the first season, I saw a guy on campus by the name of John Janiak, who was at the time a redshirt senior, and he talked me into coming down and working out with the heavyweight, who was also a football player. He was a senior, and I ended up training with him. He just said, come down and work out, so I trained with him, and I thought I could beat him, so I challenged him to a wrestle-off, and I beat him, and he quit. So 3 weeks later, I was in Florida on winter break, and I was the heavyweight, so that's just how it worked out. And then from then on, I just did both sports, football and wrestling.
Okay, and then why did you want to go into wrestling?
Into pro wrestling?
Yeah, into pro wrestling.
At the time, I didn't. When I'm talking like early college years, I really was not a fan of it. And back in those days, it wasn't as mainstream, I guess you could say. And what happened was, I met a guy by the name of Dick Byer towards the end of my career at Syracuse, and he had just returned from a long stay in Japan of like 7-8 years wrestling over there for All Japan. And he talked to me at one of our wrestling banquets. He came back, being a Syracuse alumni, he came back to the wrestling banquet, talked to me, and said, are you interested in getting into pro wrestling? I said, well, I don't really know anything about it. And he said, well, just finish your schooling. I had, 4 or 5 more months left. And he said, when you graduate, give me a call. And basically that's what I did. I called him and ended up starting to train. First of all, he had me moving furniture. He had 3 farmhouses in upstate New York, and I was moving furniture from one to the other until he decided which one he wanted to really stay in. And eventually, after that ended that summer, he was scheduled to work a tour in Germany. So I went to Germany with him, and that was actually the first time I'd ever gotten in a ring. So I trained with him for 2 weeks and had my first match with him. So
after just 2 weeks of training?
2 weeks of training.
What was that like?
It was different, by being an amateur wrestler, I kind of picked it up pretty fast, I think, because when I perceived looking at wrestling, I knew that you couldn't hold a guy if you didn't want to be held in a certain position, so I kind of understood the philosophy of it, but I just basically went over moves, pro-style moves, hip tosses and drop kicks and stuff like that, and like I said, 2 weeks in the ring, training every day, and we had our first match. And he was only scheduled to work that 1 week, and then he left. This was in September. He left, and he was scheduled to come back, and right at Christmas time, right before Christmas, they had a big show. And basically, I was on my own. The promoter said he'd use me on the tour, and I stayed 4 months.
Okay. Now, at the time, were there a lot of amateur wrestlers going into professional wrestling? Didn't amateur wrestlers kind of look down on professional wrestling?
There were. As it turned out, at the time, Brad Rangens was one of the guys that was on that tour, who was a former Olympian, Greco-Roman wrestler. And there were some, I'm sure some did look down upon it, but...
You didn't see any of that firsthand?
No. I mean, I'm sure there were, but at the time there weren't as many. But as I look back on it, the Briscoe brothers came from that path, Jack and Jerry. And over the years, I'm sure a lot of, like Danny Hodge and a lot of amateurs got into it. But at that point, after 5 years of college, I redshirted 1 year and came back on a wrestling scholarship my 5th year. I was ready to make some money. So that's what motivated me to try to learn the business fast was, to get to that position in the business to make money.
So pro wrestling just seemed like the best money option at the time?
Yeah, because at the time I was taking interviews, to go get a regular job, with companies, applying, doing interviews and applying to companies to get a job. But I kind of looked at it like, I'll give this a try, and if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. So, but it seems, knock on wood, I picked it up pretty quick and just started doing it. So, like 23 years later, I turn around and go, wow, well, that was a long training period. So,
was it tough for you to get used to taking bumps?
Not really. I mean, that's after playing football and wrestling and basically being involved in sports. It came to me pretty naturally, I think. So, and just filling in the spaces as you learn to work. If you're comfortable, I should say, with going using wrestling holds and stuff, I think it's an advantage of picking it up early, especially in my case because I never was a fan of it watching, so I didn't know anything about that aspect of it, but I still was able to pick it up pretty quick because of my amateur background, I think.
How about the working side of things, like selling and psychology? Was that tough to pick up without really being a pro wrestling fan?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is what people do. It's a natural reaction. You want to rush everything when you first start out, and you can overdo something because once you get experience, older guys that you work with, they'll tell you slow down, slow down, slow down, and that's the initial rush the initial thing is to rush everything. So yeah, it's like anything. I mean, really working every day, and I was told this at the time I got into business, you're not going to feel comfortable out there in front of people and really be relaxed in there until you spend 5 years in the ring, and that's working every day. So I can understand, like, guys trying to wrestle now, it's hard to do because you can't perfect your skill because you're not doing it every day. I mean, in those days, you didn't get any days off. You just wrestled 7 days a week. When you went to a territory, that was the schedule, 7 days a week, and you might get a week off at Christmas time. Other than that, you're in there every single night, and you're learning, perfecting the skill. So it's just different.
What veterans were the most helpful to you, like particularly in Germany?
In Germany, let's see, Butch Reed was there.
Okay.
He actually showed me how to throw a drop kick. Dick Murdoch, I had my second match with.
Oh, really?
Who whacked me in the head with a chair so hard my feet were tingling for a week. Who else was there? Brad Rangens, like I mentioned before, he was there. Skip Young, Sweet Brown Sugar, he was there. And that style is totally different because over there they have rounds. And actually, you're taught to work one side, an arm, in the States, they were totally opposite. So you would be in the middle of a match, and then ding ding, the round would end, and you go back like a boxing match, So it was a lot different, and really you had to, once I came back to the States, it was like re-educating myself, or you had to learn all over again a different style, because that was, pretty much a different style that they use there. So
yeah. When, like, Dick Murdoch hit you with that chair, was that maybe him trying to test you as being new to the business?
Yeah, and he just, it's kind of a respect thing, and like I have no conception of what I was doing, and learning, I learned something that night too. Don't just, stand there like a sitting duck and protect yourself. So I don't think he was letting me, give me a wake-up call, but it was still, he could have killed me with it, and he didn't, so he just laid it in there pretty good. So
yeah. Did you ever say to yourself, in amateur wrestling or any other sport, you don't get hit over the head with chairs? What am I doing, doing this right now?
Yeah, it was for me frustrating right at the beginning because I wanted to know what I was doing, and that was just a time process. But actually in college I had a few matches like that too, so I remember going back to one match, and it was probably my third or fourth match in collegiate wrestling, like I said, we went down to Florida, and we came back on a swing after we did a tournament in Miami, and I wrestled this guy, Mark Totten. The guy was like 6'6", about 330 pounds, and he was a center for the Gator football team. And they had just returned from, like, I think it was the Cotton Bowl the night before, or that night. They just got back in, so we had a weigh-in, and there was no heavyweight. And then you go back for an evening right before the match starts, and they do another weigh-in. And this guy walks through the doors, and they look like Hoss Cartwright, you know, and I'm going, oh. And the guy started ribbing me, you know. So anyway, we started having a match down there, and he underhooked me and boom, threw me through the scorer's table, like spun me around and went boom, and we knocked the scorer's table down. So the second time, he just started coming at me again, rushing me, and I just turned and hip tossed him, and his head went boom on the gym floor. So that was basically like my first pro match, and this is my freshman year in college. So, but I ended up, luckily he was so tired because he hadn't trained in wrestling that I'd only had about a week and a half of training. But I ended up outpointing him, and we won the match. So, like, I look back, I had another match, and we got stuff thrown at us in Lehigh. So, you know, it's like you were talking about, a wake-up call, you know. So, yeah, Murdoch definitely gave me a wake-up call. So,
were there any veterans that tried to hold you back or discourage you?
No, not really. Everybody was pretty helpful, and actually, a lot of guys that I really started learning the business from. After that, I went to the Carolinas, and I was talking to one of your buddies here earlier about that, and there was Wahoo McDaniel was the booker, and the Briscoe brothers, who had come from the same background, you know, being amateurs in college, helped me out a lot, and most of the guys were real helpful. They had Piper there, Morocco, Jay Youngblood and Ricky Steamboat were there. Sergeant Slaughter was there. It was really the best beginning learning experience I could have had because there was so much talent in there, and even by watching the matches you learn, you know, a lot because and when the Wahoo took over that book, I think it was in like April, by middle of summer everything was selling out there, so you know, it was a good experience.
But was Wahoo good to work for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wahoo actually liked me and took an interest in me, and you know, being an amateur football player in college and stuff, and then pro, you know, he liked my background, and actually what he did for me, instead of just putting me on television right away, he let me work like for 3 or 4 months, working every night before I started doing any TV, and you know, that was really my first territory where you really started learning. And like I said, working every night, you know, it's just after a while things you think about become second nature, and they're going to look more spontaneous because you're not telling your mind, oh, I got to do this, you know, more robotic than just letting it flow. So
it kind of quickly became natural to you?
Yeah, you know, and that's what I'm saying, like working, just the fact that you have to go out there and work a match, you know, 15, 20 minutes every night, 7 days a week, you're going to become more comfortable in front of the fans, you know, more comfortable in what moves you use, and just, you know, it just becomes more second nature than at the beginning when you're nervous about making a mistake, you know.
Yeah, so you were pretty much trained on the job then?
Yeah, pretty much, you know. I mean, that's basically how it worked, though, because there wasn't, back in those days, I don't know of any schools that you went. I'm sure I've heard of instances where guys, you know, wanted to get in the wrestling business and they would go with somebody that'd been in it and pay them to train them, but, you know, I just basically started getting in the ring and going in front of people. So
and that's a good bunch of workers that you named too.
Exactly. I mean, they're, like I said, I really couldn't have been in a better place because those were, I mean, right there you had several NWA champions, you know, over the years that had held the titles there, and so it was a great learning experience.
Well, what did you think of the travel schedule?
It was hard. I mean, we drove
Did you travel with the same people usually?
It just depended, because a lot of times I went with the Briscoes if they were. It depended because back in those days they had maybe 2 to 3, 4 towns running a night, and it depended on who you were booked with. Also, Jake Roberts was there, who was a great worker, you know. I mean, the list goes on who was there, but it depended on who was booked on that town, and you would basically, you know, hook up with somebody, and 2 or 3 guys would go in a car, and to split expenses, and you know, because one night you might be in Richmond, Virginia, the next night in Savannah, Georgia, and Charlotte was the home base. So most times, unless you had 2 or 3 days, like in the Virginias, you would drive back and then stay at your house, apartment, whatever you had, go the other way the next day. So.
Any funny or interesting road stories spring to mind from that era?
Well, too many to remember. Too many to remember. So, I don't know. Just being on the road like that was a different kind of era than getting up and flying in an airplane every day. There was a lot of beer drinking and just a lot of road trips and rock and roll on the way up and country and western on the way back. So it was it was a lot of fun, really, because you more so worked with the people in the business, and guys were more willing to help you out, because if they looked at somebody and figured down the road they could make money with you, where, you know, back in those days too, they had so many different territories, they were always looking for, and there was always some place to go, and then the business kind of got smaller and smaller and smaller of places to go, so it became more of a corporate-ended business than people working together, you know.
Yeah. So like back then, like maybe Jack Briscoe saw, hey, in a year or so I could have a money drawing program with this guy, so I'm going to help him along. Whereas today it's more like with the backstabbing, because there's such a limited spot.
Yeah, it's more of looking at it like, well, if somebody can challenge my position, where, like you're saying, that's exactly right. Back then it would be like, you know, guys would help a younger guy out because they look down the road that, you know, I can do a program with this guy and make money with him. So,
yeah. Out of the Carolinas, like, who did you get a chance to work all of those top names? And
yeah, pretty much. I mean, whether it was like in a tag situation, actually the first break, I guess, I got into business, Wahoo, like I said, he kept me off TV for like 3 or 4 months until I got more comfortable. And then I did a program with Bad Leroy Brown for the TV championship belt. And the deal was I'd keep going on TV week after week, and I would challenge him. So about 3 or 4 weeks in a row, I kept getting closer to beating him, but he still would beat me. And then we worked up to a big show, and it was Christmas Eve in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I challenged him again. And I beat him for the belt in Charlotte on Christmas night and sold out whatever that Coliseum held, like 11,000, 12,000 people. And, you know, it was just building a program and basically making a new guy, you know, the way they did it. So after that, you know, it got easier, you know, it brought you up from this level to this level. So it was a good break. And also in that time period, Johnny Weaver, Charlotte would run, like, I guess it was once a month up in Toronto. And what they would do, they would keep like a crew of guys, mostly younger guys that they didn't so much weren't involved in the Charlotte territory. And we would stay, there was like 4 or 5 of us, and then they had Canadian guys up there, and we would stay in Toronto and film like two days of TV after the Toronto show. And I got a belt up there, like a TV champion belt up there, so I would work the shows that they ran in Canada every month. Once a month we would go up there and I'd do Toronto, and then so it kind of built me up in that end of it. And I guess one of the reasons they did that too is because I was from up in the New York area, and you know, could talk about being in Canada and whatnot. So Yeah, it was an experience.
Yeah. How about, you mentioned that you'd have to go on TV every week and challenge them. Was it tough to pick up how to do promos for you?
Yeah, and that's one thing, like Jake Roberts helped me out with being young too. And he told me to go to the, see back then they would film TVs every Wednesday in, say, Charlotte, and at a TV studio. And he said, you know, what you need to do is go there Wednesday mornings. They would do the interviews like at 9 in the morning. And he said, go watch the interviews and see how it's done, and you know, go ask Wahoo if you can do an interview. And it's kind of like you're the right place, the right time. They'll throw you in there to try an interview. So the more you did, the more you got comfortable with. And actually, one of the best interviews in the business was Piper, obviously. And Piper would do interviews, 40 interviews, you know, for each market. And the guy would just, you know, with the energy would talk. So it was a learning experience on that end of the business too, just watching the guys, you know, different guys do different kind of promos and stuff. So
what was Piper like back then?
He's a wild man. You know? Definitely a wild man.
How about Jake? Did you think that he would end up the way that he is today?
No, and that's sad because when, you know, it's tough. Jake was a great talent. I mean, in the ring, and a great interview too. You know, he really understood how to pull strings, you know, with the people. It's just, unfortunately, looking back, you know, over the years, with the guys that have died that are in my era and had just trouble, it's, you know, it's pretty sad actually. So, but, you know, at the time, Jake was on the ball. You know, he had it going on. So.
Yeah. Did after you got the belt in the Carolinas, are there any title matches or title programs that are really memorable to you?
Yeah, I think that first one in Charlotte, I mean, that was pretty special because it erupted, you know, the building after the little program we did where I kept trying to beat him, and, you know, and the guy obviously did me a favor by doing that and put me over. But then after that, I worked with Bad Leroy for, you know, like 3 or 4 months, 5 months. So.
I've been trying to get the belt back.
Right, and doing stuff like that. And I remember you're talking about memorable trips or whatever. The night after, which was Christmas Eve, I guess it was Christmas night, I won the belt, right? So they pulled a big rib on me because we used to go to this club, and a bunch of us went down to this club. So when we were in the club, I rode with them, and they took the belt out of the trunk of the car. So, of course, we stayed out late that night, and then the next morning we have an afternoon show in Greensboro, which is another real big show for them at Christmas time, sold out, Greensboro Coliseum. So I'm getting ready, and all of a sudden I realize I don't know where the belt is. So they held it out right before I got to go out, and then they got Crockett in on it, where Crockett's coming up to me and going, if you don't have that belt, you're fired, you know. So right before I got to go to the ring like 2 seconds before they finally gave me the belt. So it was, you know, one of those beginning ribs that never ended deal, you know. So
what was Jim Crockett like?
Crockett is he's a very short tempered guy. Not tempered, but very to the point, I guess it would be. I always got along with him pretty good. I was pretty lucky, knock on wood, of getting along with most of the promoters that I worked for. But then again, I was pretty fortunate too, because I know from talking to different guys, they went to so many different territories, and basically the only territories I ever worked were, well, I did Germany, a short stint up and back and forth, doing a couple shows at a time in Montreal. Back in those days, Andre the Giant, Gino Brito, Dino Bravo, and Frank Valois owned Montreal. So I would go up because of my affiliation with Dick Beyer. He was working some shows up there. And this is in between Germany and going to the Carolinas. I would go back and forth to Montreal and work a few shows up there. So after that, once I got into the Carolinas, I only worked in the Carolinas, WWF and WCW, and Florida 1 year. So I didn't have to hop around to different places as much, and that's pretty fortunate compared to, you listen to some stories, you know, where guys were having to drive 1,000 miles a week and get $50 payoffs, you know. So, I mean, realistically, my first year in the business, I made money, so I was fortunate.
Yeah. How did work in Canada compare to work in the Carolinas?
It was pretty similar because a lot of the Canadians, you know, worked in the States, you know, and at one time there was a huge influx of Canadians that worked for WWF, so the guys that work similar, and you know, and the crowds are similar, you know, to perform in front of, so it was pretty much the same.
And then why did you end up leaving the Carolinas?
Well, at the time I was there a year and a half, I believe it was, and Dusty, and back in that era too, what would happen is a promoter like Dusty was affiliated with NWA because they had Florida NWA, Kansas City, St. Louis, you know, different sectors of that, wherever their champion went. Dusty, I guess, had called and said that they wanted a young babyface and to come down there. So they sent me down to Charlotte, and that's what the difference was. I mean, to Florida. That's what the difference would be this day and age. If you had a guy you wanted to keep, you wouldn't send him anywhere. Yeah. But they were all working within each other. So they called and said that they needed a babyface down there. And Crockett's came to me and Jimmy did in Wahoo and said, you know, you have an opportunity, because I was here and they could move me up to the top of that echelon down there, being a smaller territory. And that's the first time I went down, that's where I actually teamed up with Barry Windham. So a short time after that, we had the tag team titles down there. So
yeah, so it's kind of time to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and it was an experience for me, because what I'm saying is that would be an opportunity if they wanted to use me later, where I would gain experience, you know, because you're doing more promos, you're in a belt situation, you know, and in a tag team situation, you know, so it worked out pretty good. So
yeah. I mean, and Dusty Rhodes was the booker in Florida?
Yeah, Dusty was the booker, and I think Kevin Sullivan was helping out book it too, and Eddie Graham was still, you know, involved with it. He wasn't involved with so much the booking end, but he was still running the company. So
yeah. But what was Dusty Rhodes like back then?
Dusty was a lot of fun. I mean, it was an easy territory compared to Charlotte. You still had a lot of driving, but it was like living in Tampa. It was a good experience, you know, to move. That was my first time living in Florida, and everything was like a much smaller territory, and guys worked together to try to draw houses, you know.
Yeah.
And they didn't run 3 and 4 towns a night. It was much smaller, but Florida was doing good business. Like, I think probably '84 was the last really good year they had, and then things started to break up with the WWF and stuff. So
yeah. Did you prefer either Dusty or Wahoo as booker, or did it not matter to you?
I think they just had a different approach to it. It really didn't matter. I mean, Dusty was more of a flamboyant, obviously, type when he wrestled, as to Wahoo's approach of, you know, like real stern out there. So they're just different personalities, but I mean, both of them had some good ideas. We did business with both of them, so.
Yeah. How about Kevin Sullivan? What was he like back then?
He just pretty much did he was involved with doing his own deal, like the Devil deal.
He pretty much booked his own stuff then, and
yeah,
stayed out of your stuff.
Yeah, he didn't really have as much input. Dusty was like the main would orchestrate what was going on within Florida territory. But Kevin, I guess, just helped out with them. And I'm trying to remember. J.J. Dillon was also in the office there at the time. So.
And then how did the idea come about for you and Barry wanting them to start teaming up?
I guess Dusty just kind of put us together because we were both within the same age group, and Barry had already been pretty established there, you know. He had been there for probably a couple of years before that, so, I mean, I don't know, they tried us out together and it clicked, so, you know, they stayed with it.
Did you guys have immediate chemistry with each other?
Yeah, I mean, it came together pretty quick, and some guys, I guess, you can just do that with, where you don't have to, you kind of know, and the more we worked, the easier it got, you know, trying to do some double team stuff and whatnot, so.
Yeah, what were your impressions of Barry outside the ring?
I got along with him. I mean, but, you know, he's my brother-in-law now, so. I mean, that's actually how I met my wife. She came to visit. She was working for an airline and came to visit, and 6 months later we were married, so.
Oh, really?
You know.
When you were first in Florida?
Yeah, that was that same in '84, so.
Yeah. Was there any, like, heat in the locker room, maybe people thought that Barry was getting a push because of Blackjack Mulligan?
Well, that possibly could have been, but at the same time, Barry was over as good as anybody in that territory, so. Yeah. I mean, he had his own merchandise guy, and he was drawing a lot of the younger kids in there, especially girls. Yeah. So I can't see where anybody, that may be, but that's how it works in any business, you know, and it worked that way and right to this day in this business. So if anybody did say something about that, if he couldn't handle the job in front of him, I would say people might have a bitch about it, but, you know, like I said, I mean, he was over there, so.
And did Dusty come up with the I.R.S. Express name?
No, that was, we got that when we went to New York. Okay. So I don't know who exactly came up with it. Or maybe, no, you know what, we did. Looking back on it, yeah. Because they told us when we went to WWF to think of a name for us, you know. So we kind of threw it around and came up with, at the time, I guess, you know, with all the Russian still at the Cold War and all that, so we came up with the U.S. Express and came up with several different names, but that's what we decided on, so we kind of stuck after that doing it.
Okay. In Florida, what were some of your favorite guys to work?
Well, there a lot of matches we worked. I worked with Ron Bass, Cowboy Ron Bass, a bunch of times, and he actually taught us a lot too, because we did, well, me anyway, Barry had probably done that before. We did our Broadways I did them with Bass, with Flair down there, with Harley Race. I mean, and I had never done anything like that before, going an hour, you know, and having those guys lead you through a match. I mean, it's kind of a lost art now. And back then too, being younger, at the time, what they would do, like we would go out and our job was to work a 30-minute match, a 30-minute tag match almost every night. So you learn to do a whole bunch of different stuff in 30 minutes than you would than going out and doing a 7-8 minute match. So it was a fine-tuning experience. Now I'm probably 4 years into the business, but I'm able to go and work a 30-minute match or an hour Broadway, you know, but naturally, without somebody leading you through that, you probably couldn't do it. But these guys were so experienced in doing it, you know, they lead you through it, to take a break, to build it back up, and basically what you would do would work 4 15-minute matches in that time period, like build it up, slow it down, build it up, you know, and it was a learning experience. So yeah. I got to work with a bunch of different guys, but the territory was still smaller. I mean, we worked same guys a lot, and you had to keep fueling programs within that to sustain it, you know, to get people to come back like the next time you were in that town. So
how would you compare working Flair for an hour to working Harley Race for an hour?
Just a lot different pace. Like Harley Harley was a slower pace and but a great worker. You know, he taught you just a real perfectionist too. Boom. Flair was just more when he's like you had to keep up with him. You know, he said, okay, this is what we're doing. Boom, boom. And you know, after 58 minutes, Flair to end the match with me airplane spinning him, dump him, go to pin him, ding, 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 the bell rings. So just a much faster pace, you know. And that's hard too because Flair pretty much did that every night where you're not doing it every night, so you got to keep to his pace, and he's used to that pace because that would be his job to go in there and work with a up and coming guy to try to make him look good, you know, because he was the champion and that NWA champion did many Broadways. So
yeah. And then like, how did those guys like Flair and Race treat you? Did they kind of like just tell you, hey, we're going to do it this way, I'm the world champion, or did you get input, or did you just kind of keep your mouth shut and let them kind of lead the way?
Pretty much, you know, they didn't come to you and say, we're going to do this. They worked with you, but it was, you definitely would listen to them.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't listen to them, you wouldn't have as good a match. So you just tried to learn from the experience and listen and, you know, do the best you could and hang in there because it's a long time, 60 minutes.
Yeah. So they didn't really come to you with any kind of ego or anything?
No, not really. Because you're trying to do business, like I said, and draw that house because you might get a return match out of it where it's going to draw some people. But if you're this close to beating somebody, then, you know, you come back the next time, they're going to come see it again in hopes that you can beat them, you know. So.
Yeah. And then you guys also had a chance to work with Road Warriors down there. What were they like? I think there was a Lords of the Ring show.
Yeah, that was when they first started wrestling together, and we worked. Barry and I worked with it was at the Orange Bowl, and worked a match with them. We beat them that match, but it was good. They had a unique deal, you know, at the time, just huge guys and you know, with their gimmicks, so it worked out well. I mean, the people liked it, and you know, we were the hometown favorites of being from the TV and being down there, so yeah, it worked out pretty good.
Was it tough to work them because it kind of had a reputation of being really green and kind of stiff in the ring?
They weren't. No, it wasn't that hard to work for them. They were pretty green, but so, I mean, I actually started the same time as Joe Laurinaitis. He came to Charlotte, and I believe he got hurt, so he was there about 3 months, and then he went back to Minnesota and teamed up, whoever put him and Hawk together, and you know, they started taking off. So they had the look where it was impressive by doing an interview, you know, before that Orange Bowl show of we're coming in and kicking your ass, so the people bought what they were saying, especially how they looked, you know.
Yeah.
So it was pretty fiery, you know, to come on and fight with them. So it worked out pretty good.
What was it like working the Orange Bowl?
It was good.
Yeah.
It was good.
Did it seem like something special to you, or was it just another night?
No, it was special. I mean, we probably had 40,000 people in there, 35, so it was a big show.
Yeah.
Probably to that date, the biggest show I'd ever worked on. So it was pretty intense.
And then
payoff was the shits, but the show was good.
Not really. You didn't get paid for the house then?
No, not as good as we hoped. So,
was that Eddie Graham? So
I don't know who made the checks out, but it wasn't what we thought. So
yeah. How would you describe Eddie Graham?
I liked Eddie.
Yeah.
I liked him. He was quite a character, really. I remember one time he took me to lunch, and he was one of the guys that you know, really stressed about selling in the business, whether you're a heel or a baby face. If you don't sell anything, then you can't make people mad, or you can't make them like you, you know. If nothing hurts you, Eddie was a promoter of selling both sides as a heel or a baby face. So yeah, I liked Eddie. He was a character.
Yeah. Were you surprised when you heard about him passing away?
Yeah, that was tragic.
Yeah.
Because I know Mike well too, so Yeah, that was tough.
Do you think it was because the territory?
I really don't know the ins and outs of what the situation. How can you really answer that?
Yeah.
When something like that happens, you don't know what somebody's thinking. I mean, you really can't answer a question like that because at the last second you don't know what's going through somebody's head. So,
Yeah. And then why did you end up leaving Florida?
Let's see. We went.
Was that when
That is when we went back to Charlotte, and I stayed in Charlotte about two or 3 months, and I don't really remember the reason. It was supposed to.
Did you go to Charlotte with Barry or?
Yeah, I went to Charlotte with Barry, and Dusty went too, but I don't remember. I guess they were trying to expand it or whatever happened, but it worked out that when went back to Charlotte, the territory was so down that we weren't making any money, and we got a call from WWF and asked if we'd like to come in there, so we left. And that's where we really became the U.S. Express, and we're there like a month, and we got the tag team titles. So
when you went to WWF, did you think it was going to explode the way that it did into the mainstream, or did you think it was just going to another territory?
Well, it actually had started. We were hearing rumors, and that's especially at the time of how good the WWF was doing, because at the time people started going from different territories for the fact that they were making good money in WWF. So it was starting to lure guys out of the smaller territories, and like when we got the call, it was just starting to really climb up the the ladder and get notoriety. But the only thing at the time, nobody knew how long that would last, and that was one of the tough parts about going there. Is that first year in 1985. Barry and I worked like 300 shows that year, in just a different city every night. And I think their philosophy was, burn it while it's hot, because nobody knew exactly how long that was going to last. And that's what put a strain on a lot of guys too, because you never got any time off.
Yeah.
So.
Is that where a lot of guys kind of fell into drugs and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm sure that didn't help. I mean, trying to actually do 300 shows or 80 days in a row, you physically get to the point you're totally exhausted, and that's what will happen. People will start taking this to get themselves up, and this to get try to go to sleep, and then sooner or not, it hits the fan, and you're past the point of just taking it for a reason. You're taking too much or whatever, and you get guys falling out. So
yeah. What were your first impressions of Vince McMahon?
I thought he was real professional. He would come to you and, hello, I'm glad you're here, and I've got a lot of respect for Vince. He's been very successful. I mean, very smart guy. You can't argue that point. I mean, to do what he's done within the wrestling business and take it where it is, where it's been, very smart guy.
Yeah. Did he change a lot throughout the years? Because obviously you kept going back to Vince.
Yes and no, but you can't not change and have success to his. I think he got a little bit more cynical towards people because, over having problems with people. After a while, it's like anything. If somebody's bitching at you 24/7, you're going to go, at some point, you're going to either bark back at them or, but, I mean, like I said, Vince is a businessman, and I think if you can do business with him, as long as we don't try to shoot each other, there's always room to do business. That's one thing. Where some other promoter at some point doesn't like a guy, well, I'll never use him again, Vince would look at it through business eyes first and personal eyes second. So,
yeah. When you first went to WWF, did Vince make any promises to you, like we're going to go national and we're taking over the territories?
No, No, it was, no words were ever said like that. I mean, you could basically see after a while, after a few years, that they were getting less places to go, though, you know, so.
Yeah.
I mean, the more powerful WWF got, the less powerful other places got, so.
Was there any concern among the guys in the WWF locker room, like, oh, we don't have any place to really go, or was everyone just kind of living the high life back then?
Yeah, I don't think everybody, you didn't really have time to sit down and look at a bigger picture, you know, while it was happening, but it was happening, and eventually there were, you know, maybe 2 places to go at the time, and it totally changed the business.
Were you surprised that you won the WWF titles so quickly, the tag titles?
Yeah, it was pretty surprising to us because, like I said, when we first went up to WWF, we got a pretty good response from the fans, and but back in those days, it wasn't the building process like they do the vignettes and everything. So, yeah, it was a surprise put them on us that fast because unless they had some plans down the road because of the situation, what was going on globally, that would be a good matchup with us and the Sheik and Volkov because we were the U.S. Express. So yeah, it was a surprise.
Did they tell you when you were coming in you were going to get them, or was it like kind of a night of the show kind of thing?
I think they told us, if I can remember, about a week beforehand, not a lot of notice, or maybe 3 or 4 days. So it wasn't a long notice of getting a chance, but yeah, it was real exciting knowing that ahead of time that we were going to get the belts. So
now you won the belts from Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch. What was it like wrestling Dick Murdoch and winning the tag title from him after, you know, you had your second match against him, and now here you are coming to WWF?
Right.
And
yeah, it was a good experience because at the time, the first time, I was just some really green guy, and Murdoch was working with me, and I didn't know my way around. So, and then the second time, doing a little program with him, and you know, I was married to Barry's sister at the time, and they were Blackjack and Barry knew each other, and like they used to call Murdoch Uncle Dickie. So, you know, it was more of a smoother situation. He didn't whack me with a chair that time. So.
Did he say anything to you like, well, you know, you've come a long way, or anything like that, or?
Probably not, knowing Murdoch.
How about Adrian Adonis? What was he like back then?
Adrian was sometimes hard to deal with. He kind of did his own deal, wasn't as friendly with the guys, you know, and so I didn't really know him all that well. I just kind of had the match and did what I needed to do and left it at that. So, because I don't think we worked with them a whole lot after that. They moved us in a different direction. So.
And then you had Lou Albano as your manager too. Well, how did you like working with him?
That was a trip. Lou was definitely a interesting guy. I mean, he was different. If you were in an interview with him, you really had to jump in there and try to get a word in. So, but yeah, he was, you know, as well known as he was in that, especially in the old WWF area. Yeah, he was a trip, and that was I guess kind of an oddball manager to have with us too, but it worked out okay.
There was a whole idea behind.
I have no idea. I don't know whose brainstorm that was.
And then WWF started getting things like the exposure on MTV and Saturday Night's Main Event on NBC. What was the feeling in the locker room, the morale like when that kind of stuff started?
It was
happening?
pretty exciting. I mean, everybody, like those kind of deals, you'd really get geared up for, you know. I mean, it was definitely a different. A poof, you know. So everybody got pretty geared up for it.
Was everybody pretty happy at that time, or was there like a lot of backstabbing to get the top spots?
No, I think everybody was, I'm sure there were some guys unhappy, but everything was going pretty smoothly because people were making money, you know, and as long as they made good money, they were happy. But I think once again, the fatigue factor, just the grind of never getting any time off, you know, it took its toll on a lot of people because families especially, you know, not being able to get home. It was like a common practice type of thing. Oh, what's his name's AWOL, you know, I mean, they can't find him. He left because somebody every night would be AWOL, you know, it was the deal. because you just hit that point of cracking on the road and you had to get away from it, you know.
Was the road scheduled so much so that like the locker room really wasn't able to enjoy the success of being on Saturday night or Saturday night's main event or everything that was happening?
Well, like big shows like that, when that first started, that was pretty exciting, but it was hard to get excited about stuff because, like I say, the travel schedule and it was so new and so hot, every place was selling out. There was no rhyme or reason to how they scheduled anything, you know. And they would book like Boston Garden one night. The next night you would be in San Francisco. Then you'd be back in Allentown, Pennsylvania the next night. And then you'd be in Houston, Texas. And then you'd be in halfway Winnipeg, Canada. So there was no rhyme or reason because at the time everything was so hot. What they would do, any building they could get in, they'd book it no matter where you were the night before. That wasn't the concern. The concern was, when can we get to this building or back to this one or this one? And they just started, you know, darting everybody all over the place. And I think that, you know, being so new, that big a scale was something they had to go through learning steps too. And eventually, you know, going back over the years to WWF, they had tried to book for expense-wise too, not to fly guys all the way over here and then have them all the way over here the next day. They kind of tried to stay in an area and work that area and then go to the next area, you know. But at the time, like I said, it was so hot that no matter where you went, you know, it seemed like it was just sold out to the max. So.
Yeah.
You know.
Now this was about the time when Hulk Hogan was really beginning to explode.
Yeah.
How did he handle that success? Did he change at all? Or?
No, he pretty much stayed within his guidelines with the guys. I mean, you know, he was doing a lot of days too with the interviews, and you have to give him credit. I mean, he stuck up there and just kept going, you know, and made a lot of money, obviously. So.
Yeah. When you guys, or how did you first hear about the idea of WrestleMania?
Wow. Probably thinking back on it, Vince must have come to the guys. I don't remember offhand. I mean, we were talking almost 20 years ago, so yeah, I don't remember the first time, but we were probably told within that, you know, we're going to try something new. We're going to do a pay-per-view and call it WrestleMania. I don't remember, to be honest with you, offhand the first time, but I'm sure we were told from the office that, you know, on this date, this is what we're going to do. We're going to try something, you know, obviously different.
Do you remember like what the feeling was like in the locker room leading up to WrestleMania? Like if everybody was nervous, what if this fails and the company's done, or if this was going to be a huge success?
No,
I
think that everybody had pretty much confidence at the time that, you know, not too much could go wrong because, you know, just from and you really didn't have time to sit around and think about it all that much. It was just, you know, we're going to do another show. I think everybody did get excited because they gave us a little time off right before it. You know, they quit. They just had some TVs in the can, and they said, okay, you guys are going to have this many days off before because we got a big show, and then you're going to have this many days off after, you know. And I think that was probably, at the time, thinking back, probably the most exciting thing because we were going to get a few days at home, you know.
Yeah, so it wasn't even so much like this was going to be a huge event. Everyone was just happy.
I think everybody knew it would be, that it would be successful. Because, like I said, it didn't seem like anything could go wrong at the time because it was building so much momentum and getting publicity, and it was actually, you know, a pretty wild show with all the stars they had involved with it. Something totally different, you know.
Yeah. What are your memories of that day?
Well, actually, I know that Barry and I just we flew up that morning and we left New York that night. We didn't even stay there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we flew in, and I remember I almost bought an Akita, a dog, because I was going to get like a dog for home. And we went and we got in early and went and looked at these Akitas in New York City somewhere. I don't remember where, but I almost bought one, and then I said, and I decided, when I got home, I ended up getting a Rottweiler anyway, so. But yeah, we just flew in. I mean, it was hectic around there, you know, with all the people and the celebrities, and everybody was pretty jacked for it. And then we worked our match and took a quick shower and back to the airport because we had we were flying back to Florida, and we hadn't been there in a while, so we wanted to get back home.
So it wasn't even like, it was like, oh, like this is a huge Super Bowl thing. It was kind of like, let's go do the show, and this is a big show, of course, but then let's get back
Yeah,
home.
it probably, I mean, it was that feeling, but it wasn't, because of the time schedule. If you could have stayed up there a few days and relaxed and appreciated it, and you had been home more, it probably would have been different, you know. I'm sure a lot of people did celebrate up there, but it was like winter time, or when was it, April?
April or March.
Yeah, it was nice in Florida at the time, so we were back there, and I think we had something lined up special down in Florida going on or whatever, so
yeah,
we had a vacation lined up or whatever we were doing, and just bolted back down to Florida that same night.
Were you guys disappointed you had to lose the tag titles that night, or didn't that mean anything?
No, I think that, you know, it was part of the deal, that we knew we'd be working with those guys for quite a while, so it was not a problem.
Yeah. Was it like there was more money in the chase than in you guys as champions?
Well, I guess so. I mean, people would pay to get the belts back, you know, to see you beat them, to get the belts back. So, I'll tell you a funny story, though. It was one of the first shows we worked after WrestleMania, and I think we were in some smaller market in Georgia, and we had a match with Sheik and Volkov, and I'm supposed to keep covering the Sheik, hitting him with stuff, and Nikolai Volkov's supposed to keep coming in and making saves, and then finally we get in a big fight at the end and they throw the match out. Well, I did something to Sheik, covered him, 1, 2, Nikolai made a save, second save, third time, no Nikolai. So I 1, 2, 3, beat the Sheik in nowhere, Georgia. So Sheik's going nuts, going crazy. So we had to wrestle him, which probably this one too publicized, but the next day we wrestled them again and they beat us or something, so they still had the belts before we got back to doing TVs.
So it's the tag titles changes that nobody knew about, probably.
I mean, there was, for some reason, I don't know, whatever town we were in, right after WrestleMania, it was like, the town was horrible, and it was like some little bitty town in Georgia. Why we were there to begin with, I have no idea, but yeah, the titles switched hands there, and then the next night switched hands again, so.
What were the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov like to work?
Interesting. They would try to kill each other while you were trying to beat them.
What do you mean?
They would fight with each other. you stupid Russian, you. Nikolai didn't say much. Sheik was always screaming at him, but it was definitely interesting. We had one time we were walking to the ring in Anaheim, California, and our music was playing, and the place was packed, and they didn't have any walkways set up, so the people, you could hardly get through them as you're walking to the ring, and Barry goes, "Come on." I'm like, "What's the hurry?" You look up, there's about 20 people in the ring fighting Sheik and Volkov, having a riot. So Nikolai's like, boom, boom, big old Russian guy whacking people. So we slid in and started punching the Sheik and Volkov and started grabbing people and chucking them out of the ring, and everybody just cleared the ring. We started our match. Another time we were working in Buffalo, and we had a 6-man tag. I think our partner was Steamboat, or it may have been, I think it was Steamboat. We look up, and Nikolai's singing the national anthem, and the people in Buffalo threw so many eggs in the ring, the whole thing was just yellow, the whole ring, and he's still singing, and Morocco's trying to duck the eggs, and they were just like, poof, 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 poof. And just stuff like that happened a lot with them guys. They had a lot of heat, but it was interesting.
How about outside the ring? There's a lot of crazy Iron Sheik stories. Does he live up to those?
Yeah, he lives up to every one of them. He lives up to every one of them.
Do you have any that spring to mind?
I remember one time, and this is years later, I was working as I.R.S. and Sheik had ridden with me to Boston Garden, like the old Boston Garden. And so, he asked me for a ride. We were going back to Newark. So, jeez. We get in I said, Cheek, we need to hurry up and get out of here before the people get out. Oh, no problem, Mike. And he's got to get some beer when we get out of the show. First of all, it's Sunday. They're not supposed to sell beer in Massachusetts. So he goes, I know this guy. He gave me some beer across from the Boston Garden. So I said, come on, we need to go before the people get out. So I pull up, and we go around the building somewhere, and he knows this guy. He knocks in there, and he's talking to the guy. He's still got his wrestling shoes on, the curly toes and the pants, and his turban or whatever. And he's talking to the guy, so the guy's talking to him, telling him, I can't give you beer, it's Sunday, blah, blah, blah. So the guy, whatever, gives him some beer. So by this time, he's still in the thing. The guy's got to go downstairs to get the beer in the building, and there's a glass window. Here comes the people from the Boston Garden. Now I'm pulling my hat down and sitting there in the car like this. The people see the Sheik standing in the hey, that's the Iron Sheik in it. Now here comes the people. Banging on the window. Sheik comes out and opens the car door, throws the beer in there and shuts. Now they start hammering the rental car. Boom, boom. Start shaking it, lifting it, moving it around. And I said, the hell with this. Put it in reverse. Boom. Jumped up on the sidewalk. The Boston cops telling us to stop. And I'm like, boom. Because you had to go down a ways and they could jump on there's a ramp there that you can go up. And we're going down. Both our hearts were rushing. I mean, we were in the middle of a mob. They're turning the car, trying to turn it over, right? It was nuts. And Sheik's going on, and he takes a drink of beer. Oh, but beer tastes good, Mike Bubba. So, he's a trip. Definitely.
Then after Sheik and Volkov, you had the program against Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. What are your memories of that program?
I don't think it really ever got off the ground that much because Barry and I think that's when we decided we were out of there, so we ended up leaving shortly after that. I mean, it could have worked like anything. We got to the point where we were just burned out, and obviously it was a mistake for leaving, but both of us were young and made the mistake of saying, okay, after 300 days I need a break, and left. And then I ended up coming back and working a short time, and then went back to Florida because we were having our first child at the time, so I decided to go back down there and ended up working. That's how I got back into WCW after that, because the Florida office was still running a little, but they ended up bringing everybody back up to Charlotte, and then Crockett sold out like a year later or whatever to Turner. So.
Okay. So it was just pretty much you and Barry both burned out at about the same time?
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, like I said, being young and impenetrable, I guess, in your mind, it was, like I said, in long term it was a mistake, but also it was timing wise. I was getting ready to have my wife had her first baby, and I really didn't want to be gone, 300 days a year and have her all there by herself trying to, get everything with a newborn baby. So it worked out okay in the long term for me anyways.
Yeah. What was Vince's reaction to you guys leaving?
Yeah, he wasn't happy with it. I mean, he was pretty mad about it, I'm sure. But I came back, and like I said, a few months after that, and then it wasn't the same for me. And I figured it was time to get out of there and maybe go back at a later date.
Yeah.
Is what happened anyway, so.
Did you guys give notice, or did you just wake up one day and that was that?
Yeah, we actually left, but then we gave him a notice and came back and finished some dates up and everything, so.
Yeah. So obviously you didn't burn the bridge there because you ended up going
back. Right. It was just, like I said, being, I guess, youthful, it was a mistake to leave then, but, whatever works. I mean, you got to understand, too, this is a business, and sometimes you got to do what your personal life needs as opposed to, for the business, so.
Yeah. Why did you think it was a mistake, just financial-wise?
Yeah, financial-wise. I mean, because actually you missed out on some huge checks. Those dolls just started coming out. Yeah. And the guys made really good money especially on whoever had an initial doll coming out. And with our gimmick being, USA, I think our dolls would have sold really well. So, in the position we were in too, being, the tag team champions at the time and everything, and having to run. So we were this close to, we were next in line to get a doll made, and we left. So I guess they put that on hold. So, but financially and, once you leave in that situation, even though you do go back, it takes a long time to get built back up, or where Vince is going to put you in that position again. You got to start over again is basically it. So
yeah, what was it like going back to Florida? Because obviously now you're coming back more of a veteran with a lot more experience.
Well, it was rough, I'll be honest with you, because at the time, supposedly, I think the Crockett's had bought out Florida, but what they weren't doing, they were showing like the Charlotte TV down in Florida, and then having us go and do house shows. So it really wasn't the same Florida that we initially were at. So that really didn't last but about 6 months, and then they kind of closed it down, and everybody went to the Carolinas, and then it started doing pretty good business up there. But I think the company got overextended because they were trying to do what Vince was doing. If they had just stayed in their realm of the areas they were strong in, they would have had a much better success rate than trying to do the same type national image that Vince was running, So that's basically what happened to, I think the Crockett's got in money trouble trying to extend too far too fast, and that's why Turner ended up coming in and buying it out.
Yeah, so Florida was pretty much a dying territory.
Yeah, it wasn't the same. It definitely wasn't the same.
And why did you change from Rotunda to Rotunda?
Well, my real name is Rotunda, so when I got into business, I just used all like Rotundo, thinking it might be easier for people to remember or whatever. And just leaving WWF, because I used it there, I turned it back to my real name, because they can't stop you from using your real name.
Yeah.
So that's just basically what happened on that situation.
Okay. You also did the Wrestle Rock show against the Fabulous Ones.
Right.
Any memories from that? Is it just like another show for you guys?
Yeah, it was just really another show. I worked a few shows for Gagne's out there, but it just didn't seem. First of all, they wanted me to move to Minnesota, and I didn't want to move to Minnesota, so it just never worked out. I just ended up going. I think right after that, working for that's when Turner ended up starting buying out the WCW.
Now, when you first went to, I guess it was still NWA at the time, you went as a babyface, and then you turned heel. Was that the initial plan, or was the babyface thing not working, so they decided to go heel?
I don't remember, to be honest with you. It was just like, it may have been a situation that they wanted to build a new heel. It's just like any situation. If they're going to put the pressure on you to make it work, they can make it work in the wrestling business, Yeah. And actually, I was pretty much ready to turn heel, and I think that was Dusty's idea to do the Varsity Club, and that's at the time I was basically at the point I'd worked maybe 5, 6, 7 years. I was ready to turn heel. I wanted to be a heel eventually anyway, so. It's just one of those situations, and the idea worked because it was different in the aspect that everybody always did the college guy as the good guy type image, and this was the total flip-flop on it, so
yeah,
it ended up working pretty good.
Who was responsible for the gimmick? Was that mainly Dusty or Sullivan or you, as far as like coming out with the Syracuse jacket and?
Well, I think it was Dusty's idea, if I can remember. But it was, that kind of fell in place with it. They kind of left it up to me to do, the uniform and the whatnot, because it was like I said, different. The good guy from college was always the yes ma'am, no ma'am, and this was the total flip flop about bragging about this and that school, and it was pretty easy gimmick too, because there's schools in every everywhere, so you could tell the people you were going to, your school sucks and mine's the best, you know, and there's a natural heat with that. So
Did you like using Syracuse as part of the angle, or?
I didn't care.
Yeah.
I don't think Syracuse liked it too good when they...
Really? Did they say anything?
Yeah, actually, I got a few comments, or they sent me something that, but what can they do? I mean, there's really nothing they can do.
But they wanted you to
They
stop.
just didn't like hearing Syracuse sucks on national TV or whatever, you know, so, well, they can live with it, so no big deal.
Yeah. What did you think of Kevin Sullivan's role with the group?
I didn't think it fit in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Initially it was okay, but I don't know. Kevin should have done, in my opinion, something different than staying with his gimmick and trying to do this, so I don't know. It's hard to tell, perception-wise of a fan looking at, because that's not like a likely group to be together anyway, so who knows, you know. And it was one of those deals like with Steiner and everything, we just kind of winged it, you know, and to see how it went, and we started jumping on Steiner, where I did, and we teamed up against him, which kind of made him a babyface, you know, down the road, because we were always healing on him to begin with, so it worked out okay. It was actually a fun gimmick, I thought.
Yeah. How was Sullivan to work with?
He was all right. I got along with him. We basically did our own deals, you know. It was just winging in there, you know.
Yeah.
So.
How about Dusty Rhodes as Booker? Was he still the same like it was in Florida, or did he change at all?
Yeah, I don't know if he changed. You get wound up and running a bigger company. I think he did change a little. It got a little bit more impersonal, because instead of dealing with this group, you're dealing with a group this big, so it wasn't the same, you know. It wasn't the same.
Yeah. How about the locker room? Was it very political, or was
I think in NWA it was always more political, you know, because they kind of chose who was going to be their upper echelon, and it always stayed that way, you know, as time went on. So it really wasn't an opportunity. I thought there was better opportunities, especially for myself in WWF, because it was run more like a business. And at some point, if you stay with everything the same like this, you're not giving people any changes, you know. So eventually, if your business is dropping, it's time to make changes. Yeah. You know, and that, I always thought it was a better business opportunity working for WWF.
Did you guys as a group was there like any kind of frustration, like, oh, we'll always be behind the Four Horsemen, or we'll always be behind so-and-so?
No, I'm sure there was frustration, but really knowing the company, there was no way to change it. So you either decided to leave there or dealt with it while you were there, you know?
Yeah.
And that's one thing, like with myself, I always tried to look at the wrestling business as a business, not, you know, I never got into, oh my God, I got to have this belt and that belt. My concern was getting a paycheck for my family. You know, that's how I looked at it. So.
How about the travel schedule? Was that easier on you for NWA than?
NWA, yeah, it wasn't as bad. At the time, Crockett's had 2 planes, so a lot of times you were able to fly there and get back to Charlotte. So it wasn't as bad at the time, no. And then when Turner took it over, actually it was pretty decent, because you weren't doing as many house shows either, so you were home a lot more, you know.
Now, the big thing with the Varsity Club is you had like a 9-month reign with the TV title. I think it was something like that. I'll just name some of the guys that you worked then, maybe if any matches spring to mind or any memories of working them. Nikita Koloff.
Yeah, I worked with Nikita a short time. I don't even know how many matches. He was a good performer, though.
Yeah.
You know, he was over pretty good. And that always helps. If somebody's over with the people that you're working in a territory, you know, it makes the match a lot easier. Because especially as healing, you know, doing a new heel, you know, it brings you up to their level if they've been there and they're established. with that company, then it makes a difference. It makes the matches easier.
And then your former partner, Barry Windham. So what was it like to work Barry?
Yeah, it was different. I mean, working against Barry, because I remember one night Barry suplexed me out the top rope, and we were in Cincinnati, Ohio, or somewhere up there, and broke the ring. He suplexed me, and the ring just went boom, and we sunk down in the. So, yeah, it was different, you know, working with Barry as opposed to always working with him. You know, definitely, that was the first time we had ever worked against each other.
Okay. How about Jimmy Garvin?
Jimmy Garvin. I don't even remember all these matches.
Yeah, you had a few matches against him. Brad Armstrong, any memories?
Brad was really good, smooth worker.
Yeah.
Real easy to work with.
How about Sting?
Sting? I don't know. Sting and I never had great chemistry. I don't know.
Yeah. I heard that he had an ego problem back then. Some other guy said that. Did you see any of that?
Well, he was, I think, very fortunate, you know, to have the run that he did have. So
yeah,
it's. I think what happened, a lot of dissension was created with the office with guys too, because how WCW, they were explaining to guys that, okay, we're going to go on a different system here. Everybody's going to be on a base salary, and then if the people are getting with a guy, you're going to get paid incentives, which was a total bullshit lie, because they already paid a contract to this guy on the same day they were bullshitting this guy. So, you know, but that's, I guess, being naive and trusting somebody telling you this is what we're doing, and they were full of shit, and this isn't what they're doing. So I think that created a lot of dissension amongst a lot of the, and I'm talking like WCW era, you know, that's what was told to people, and that was a flat out lie. So it created a lot of dissension amongst different guys in that era there. So
okay. And then what one really unique match that you worked was the Tower of Doom match. Do you remember that? Was when the cages were stacked on top of each other? What was that like?
That wasn't one of my favorites. I didn't get it, but you know, you just try to do the best you can with what you're, you know, asked to do.
Yep. How about the Road Warriors? You worked a series of tags against them. Was there any difference between when you worked them in Florida, or did you enjoy working the Road Warriors?
Yeah, but it was hard to work with the Road Warriors, in my opinion, because first of all, like I said before, when we alluded to Eddie Graham, it's hard to work with a character that doesn't sell, and that's their deal. So if you can't sell for somebody else, then all you're going to do is make whoever you're working with look bad. You know what I mean? Because no matter what you do to them, they're not going to sell it. So it makes it a much harder match than just going out and working with, you know, and I get along with Bo Joe and loved Mike, you know, but it's a hard deal to work with, because you're taking the advantage of the other guy by not, and in my opinion too, if you build a character so strong, nobody can beat him, you know, then what you're going to do is destroy somebody that has a little steam along the way, because you're building him, you got him here, and no matter what you do to him, he can't sell for anybody that he's working with. So
yeah, was there any heat over the Road Warriors not selling, or was it just a matter that was their gimmick and you guys understood that?
Well, not necessarily, because I remember Steve Williams and Hawk getting into it a little bit, not fighting, but they were, you know, and it was over that, you know. You want us to do this all night long, but you can't sell anything we're doing, you know. So there was a little word said at one show, I don't even remember where it was, and it was a harder situation because of that.
How did that get resolved?
I don't even, like I said, they didn't get into it. Actually, they were friends, but there was a word said over it. I think we just didn't work with them all that long, is basically what happened.
Okay.
And Steve at the time too had his commitment with Japan, so you know he he ended up leaving there, I believe, right shortly after that. So
When the varsity club broke up, did you think it was the right time to break up, or did you think that more could have been done with the group?
I think more could have been done with it.
Yeah. Why do you think they broke it up at that time?
Because of political reasons, I think.
Like what?
Well, it was getting strong, and it was still had strength, and they broke it up because that'll weaken the situation, you know. But that's what I'm saying. I mean, there's a lot of politics in any business, and a lot in the wrestling business. And I saw the writing on the wall and started making plans to go a different direction at that point, you know.
So you don't think they wanted the group to get over more than as a mid-card group?
No, I don't, because it's competition to the upper echelon of the company.
Yeah.
You know, and which, in my opinion, doesn't make sense, because if something's working, you fuel it, you don't kill it.
Yeah.
Because it only makes your company stronger. You know.
Were there any names in particular that you think were holding against them?
I'm don't know for sure, because you don't know who's calling the strings half the time. And to me, that's not important. I think that it doesn't make sense, though, to not make your company stronger. It's like in the NFL, if you got two good running backs, you know, you break one of the guy's legs, now you got one good running back. You know, does that make sense? No. So,
yeah.
And like I said, business-wise, you just move over those kind of situations, and you keep going, go on to something else. So.
Okay. Looking at when Crockett sold the company to Turner, were you guys surprised when it happened, or did you see it coming?
I think there started to be rumors about it, but I think it was also inevitable, because we kept hearing more and more problems financially, you know. So it was it was in the writing.
Okay. Did things really change, like from a wrestler's point of view, when Turner took over, or was it pretty much still the same?
Well, it was still pretty much run the same anyways. I mean, it actually, for the first time though, I think that was the first guaranteed contract that I ever signed in the wrestling business. So that was a good plus to it. At least you knew I was going to make this amount, because really you never knew what guaranteed money you were going to make in the wrestling business. It was the first time that happened. So.
What did the management immediately change when Turner took over, or?
Actually they brought George Scott in, who, when WWF started going to Nationwide, George Scott was the booker there. He used to be the booker in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then they brought George Scott in. He ran WWF, got it organized to run, because they never ran like 3 and 4 times every night, and he got it up there. They brought him in for a few weeks, and then they fired him, and really never gave him a chance to do it. You know, whatever reason, somebody went in and said, well, this guy can't do this guy can't do that, so they got rid of George Scott. So, which I think was a downfall right off the initial bat, because the next 2 years WCW couldn't draw a house.
Is that after George Scott? Is that when they brought Jim Herd in?
Actually, Jim Herd came in right away. He wasn't the booker though. He was the CEO or whatever of the company.
Yeah.
But Jim Herd didn't know the wrestling business either. He had no clue.
Yeah. What were the feelings of the locker room?
That he had no clue that Jim Herd didn't know the wrestling business. So you got somebody in charge of not knowing a business. It's kind of like I don't know, a football coach running a girls basketball team, you know. Well, what do we do next, coach? I don't know. You know, and then you're relying on somebody telling them what to do, and if somebody's telling them what to do within the business, well, he can get them to do whatever he wants, whether it's good for the whole company or good for that individual or group of individuals, so it doesn't work.
Was there any kind of positive feeling like, hey, we have Ted Turner behind us now, we're going to compete with WWF, or did it just seem status quo?
Yeah, I'm sure there was, but there was never any evidence of it turning around. I mean, it went forever and ever and ever, and like I say, they couldn't draw any house shows. One of the bad things was they were giving, they were trying to work against each other to give a house show on television, and then try to get them to pay for it at the arena, you know. And Turner's a television business. They weren't concerned with the house shows, at least not initially. So they didn't, you know what I'm saying? They worked against each other. If you're trying to draw a house show, you leave something left where you want the people, you know, to buy a ticket to come see it. If you're giving it to them in a 4-hour spectacle and then re-showing it 3 times, you know, in the next 2 days, why would they pay for it when they're paying for cable and they can watch it at home?
Now, you started going through a couple of gimmicks around this time. You had the Captain Mike Rotunda gimmick. What did you think of that?
I thought it sucked, but I basically did it so I could get a good deal on a boat, which I did, so it worked out okay.
How did you end up getting a good deal on a boat out of that?
I did an appearance for Proline Boat Company as Captain Mike, and they gave me a real good price on a boat. So that's how. Actually, this is, for instance, a Jim Hurd story about somebody not knowing a business. I went to him when I was doing that, and it was like summertime in Georgia or whatever, summertime, and I live by a lake, and I said, how about let me do a personal, like a public safety announcement, being on a boat. I'm Captain Mike. And he goes, oh, that's a good idea, babe, but I don't know where we use it. Maybe on one of the 10-hour wrestling programs you got a week, you know. And he just didn't get it. I mean, it would cross over into something else. You didn't necessarily have to have. Their idea was to put 8-minute matches on there the whole show and expect people to be entertained by it. And just something little like that. One of his ideas was to have a humpback guy like Quasimodo and put the thing on his back so nobody could pin him. I was like, whoa, I don't want to be Quasimodo. So
was the Captain Mike Rotundo idea your idea, or was that something?
No, I did it, but it was a pretty stupid idea, I admit. But like I said, I had an ulterior motive for it too. So.
And then you became Michael Wallstreet as part of the York Foundation. Well, who came up with the whole idea for Michael Wallstreet?
I think originally that was Kevin Nash had thought of that, and he told it to whoever in the office, and they thought it might work on me, so they put it on me. But another Jim Hurd story. Right before that, they had Hurd had sent me a thing saying that he was not renewing my contract with WCW. It was the end of my 2-year period. So I said, all right. So at that point, I started making other plans, and then they put the Wallstreet deal on me, and this guy calls from USA Today and said, it was like when that Milken guy got in trouble, Michael Milken, with all the junk bonds and whatever. So he did a follow-up story in USA Today and had my picture in there in an article about, you know, wrestling and Michael Milken and Michael Douglas and Wallstreet deal. So it got publicity, and then Inside Edition called, and I did a segment on there for Inside Edition. So then Hurd sends me something. He's going to offer to renew or extend my contract for 6 months, and if I don't sign this within 10 days, they're withdrawing the offer. So I didn't reply or anything, and actually that's when Dusty just came back in, and I finished out whatever little time I had left on my contract, and went back up to WWF, and I went on a tour for New Japan, and then went back to WWF and started doing I.R.S. Okay.
What did you think of the whole Michael Wallstreet gimmick, like wearing the suspender?
I thought it was okay, you know, but being my history the last, 4 years, 3.5 years between Crockett's and WCW, that I would never get the opportunity to let anything be played out to its full extent. So I decided, you know, that it was time to make a move, and actually it worked out for the best. That was the best run I had with WWF, and the longest, and actually probably the most enjoyable character that I did doing I.R.S., you know, so it worked out okay. And like I said, I keep referring back, this is a business, so there's times in a business that you have to make those decisions, and plus I had property in Florida, and I wanted to move back and get my kids situated before my youngest started kindergarten and get him established, so we didn't have to move the kids around once they started school. So in the long term, it worked out, for the best.
Yeah. Did you like working with Terry Runnels?
Yeah, I have nothing against her. She wanted to be in the wrestling business, and she actually had worked for CNN for many years, I guess, in the makeup department and stuff for them. So she was already knew a lot of people, and we only did, I don't think I did on Wallstreet maybe a month and a half or something. So we really didn't have that much time to do it. But it was just one of those deals that didn't work out. And if I had a long-term contract, I probably would have, stayed there and been locked in that. But that's what I think Vince just spun it off of that Wallstreet deal, keeping me in the same kind of gimmick with the I.R.S. So, and I think that worked better anyways, because it's like one of those gimmicks that you can talk about, kind of like the Varsity Club. You can talk about a specific thing of people. Everybody hates paying taxes, and you can call people tax cheats, so it was easier, I think, to maintain heat in it,
Yeah. Did when you were going back to WWF, that Vince pretty much just told you, hey, I want to do this I.R.S. character? And
yeah, I didn't know what they were going to do. They just said, we've got some ideas and that. And at first I listened to I.R.S. and I'm thinking, how's this going to work? But then they had me do a bunch of vignettes, and how they had it scripted out. You could kind of tell where they were going with it, and I'm sure a lot of people at first go, this is going to be stupid, but it ended up working out pretty good. So
was it fun for you to do that gimmick?
Yeah, like I say, to me it was easy because you could go in front of people and talk about something, first of all, they totally dislike, is paying taxes, and then you're calling them a tax cheat, and I enjoyed doing it. It was fun.
Were there any of the vignettes or promos that really stand out to you that you really enjoyed?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't remember.
How about, was it tough wrestling and the whole suit and the
No,
tie?
at first it was, but then you kind of got used to it. It was when people were spitting on you, it came in handy. At least they spit on your shirt instead of your back or whatever. So.
You mentioned you went to New Japan. How did you end up getting hooked up there?
Actually, what happened, I had gone back. What happened at WWF, I hurt my neck in 1995. I had a crushed disc in my neck. So I was out for like 8 months, and I was still, with WWF. And then I come back. I actually worked out for 3 months, and I was working a program with Undertaker. And I worked in SummerSlam in Tampa. And a little while after that, it got to the point where I couldn't even lift my arm up, so I finally went, I didn't even have it checked at that point. And what happened, I got hit in the chin, and it shattered the disc in here.
Who hit you?
Luger.
Okay.
Coming off the ropes, and I hit my chin and shattered the disc. And like I said, I wrestled on it for 3 more months, and I went in a roller coaster at the Royal Rumble down in Busch Gardens with my kids. So I got on that and it shifted around, and I swear in 2 weeks I couldn't lift my arm up. So I finally went and got it, and I was out, I guess really didn't take me about 3 months after I had the operation. I was wrestling again, but I didn't know if I could wrestle or not again at that point. And Vince offered me a job as an agent. So I started basically doing that, at the shows. And then once my neck got well enough, I tried a match and see if I could work, and it felt okay. So I started working again, and this is the time everybody was going to WCW. So, but the good thing about it was 2 things. First of all, I really didn't want to take an agent's job, because I thought I could still wrestle some more years. Second of all, what sounded real appealing was their schedule. So I signed a contract with WCW, and once again, Vince was pretty angry at me for doing it, but I talked to him and I said, it's an opportunity for me to be home with my family more. I said, my kids at some point they're going to be too old and they're going to be gone, you know. So I took that, and once again I'm back in WCW, and they're not going to do nothing with me. So anyway, they told me I'm going on a tour because they started doing NWO in Japan. So I went over with New Japan and talked to, I knew Masa Hattori and Masao, who was the Gaijin booker over there. So I said, you know, if you guys can give me enough weeks here, I don't have to be involved with WCW, basically. So I ended up doing like 17, 18 weeks a year over there, and they kind of subcontracted me out to Japan, and then Japan had to pay WCW back, and NWO, Sting, Jeff Farmer, and Scott Norton, where Scott didn't do every tour, but he did like every other tour, and then Jeff Farmer and myself did every tour, and we were involved with the NWO faction of Japanese NWO. So actually they were doing great business there. It worked out well.
Yeah. Okay. Going back to the I.R.S. days, how did you like teaming up with Ted DiBiase?
It was good. Ted was a good partner. He knew a lot about the business, and I think it was one of those situations too, the two different characters, and you know, you could kind of feed off each other and it clicked. So it was a pretty good run with Ted.
Yeah. What was it like being in WWF when like the whole steroid scandal hit?
It was a lot of pressure on everybody because the company was getting a lot of bad press. They were losing sponsorships. Nobody knew per se the future of the company. It was pretty much stressful on everybody, you know. I mean, there was a lot going on there, and they were, like I said, losing a lot of business sponsors, you know, because of the bad press. So it was stressful on everybody.
Were people concerned about their jobs, or?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, you know, you didn't know the future of the company at the time. Plus, the WWF was spending so much money, you know, on lawyers and everything. It was astronomical to try to fight this kind of thing, and it just ended up getting, thrown out of court? You know, that really was kind of odd, I thought. So, it was a stressful period in there. People were uncertain about everything, really.
Yeah. Did you notice, like, any change in the boys as far as, like, guys getting off the gas, or Vince telling people take hold with that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm sure there was steps implemented where people were... Actually, there was, because I believe that's when the drug testing really was implemented, and we were getting tested maybe 3 and 4 times a week. Some weeks, not every week, but yeah, they implemented a drug test program, and you know, it was like systematic. You never knew, so I'm sure the guys did. If they were doing them, stopped. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Were you ever really involved in the drug scene?
No.
Okay. So it wasn't really an issue for you at all?
No.
Okay. Do you remember being King of the Ring in 1991? You went to the finals against Bret Hart?
91.
Yeah. It was a King of the Ring tournament.
Where was it?
No. Not sure where it was.
I don't remember.
Okay. Do you remember working Bret at all?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I worked Bret a lot.
What was it like working Bret?
Bret was a good worker. I mean, he was very solid, you know.
Yeah.
Bret and I had pretty good chemistry in the ring, I think. We worked quite a bit.
Okay. What was he like outside the ring?
I got along with Bret.
Yeah.
I mean, some guys probably didn't, but you can say that no matter who you're talking to, somebody doesn't like somebody that didn't like somebody in this business, you know. It's just like anything. There's personalities are going to collide, and just, you know, certain people. My philosophy was not to dislike somebody because somebody said he was, unless he did something to you, you know what I mean?
How about Ultimate Warrior? What was he like?
Actually, I never was around him all that much. He kind of came in and was gone at one point in the WWF. I did work with him a few times. He was different to work with because you had to work within his style. I mean, this is what I do, and you work around it, you know?
Yeah.
So, but being in the business over the years, you come across people like that, you know. He did draw some big houses, you know. I mean, So you just have to put people with him that are going to work within his style, you know.
Was it easy to call a match with him, or did he have like an ego?
I think I actually only worked one time with him, so, and it wasn't that long, so it was like a tag match. I think Ted and I, actually Ted worked with the Ultimate Warrior a lot more than I ever did, and I know that because he came in, like I said, I don't think it was all that long a stint, and I think I worked one tag match with him, so I really can't give you any extended kind of forecast on what it was like to work with him. And we had the match where boom, 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 and I think it was like a disqualification or something. It was like a hectic kind of blowout match, you know.
Yeah. Was there any comparison to teaming with Ted compared to Barry Windham, or was it just like two different eras and two different characters?
Yeah, it's different, you know, because you're working, first of all, the baby faces over here, like high energy pump up, and this was, like you said, a total different deal, working heel and just two different situations, you know.
Well, what are your memories of working WrestleMania 9? That's when Hulk Hogan made his big return and teamed with Brutus Beefcake against you and DiBiase.
Well, actually, that was kind of a spur of the moment thing. We were informed, I think, real shortly before that, we were doing Raw at the smaller building in New York City, and we were informed that, first of all, we were scheduled to go on a trip overseas to like England and do a tour over there, and right at the last minute they told us that called us in the office and told us they were going to shoot like a little offshoot angle here, and we would be working with Hogan and Beefcake in one of the semi-main events or whatever, how they build a double main event. So it was a plus to us, you know, for Ted and I. And we just went in and shot a little angle where I hit Beefcake in the head with the briefcase, and so it was definitely a plus, you know, getting that last bump at the time. And we were supposed to go on the tour, and then they were gonna keep us back and send us on the Concorde to make the first night of the tour, but it ended up that they just shot the angle and sent a couple more guys over. And then as soon as we were done, they came. Once we got there, whoever was over there in our place came back because we had already been booked over in Europe. And at the time, people don't realize this too. In that I.R.S. run, I think I did 16 European runs in like a 2.5, 3 year period. Because over there, business was really good doing Germany and England, and you know, that was about the time too that Wembley ran over there. So business was actually, it was down in the States, down over here, but it was really, really pumping over there. So, and I think eventually they just ran it so much it kind of burned it out over there. But I enjoyed those trips. It was different. Like a highlight, one of the best feeling buildings I've ever worked in. There's a full building in Berlin, you know, because the Germans get rocking, like a chanting, you know, rocking type, drinking kind of, and they used to do Irvin, like with a shyster, you know, with doing the I.R.S. So I just enjoyed the atmosphere of working over there, and it was different. We got to go to a lot of different places like Barcelona, and we went to Portugal, we went many times to Germany, to Holland, to I think we went to Amsterdam and someplace else there, and just a lot of places you normally went. Italy, we went to Italy, and one of the few places I went, never did get into doing like sightseeing, but I went down and saw the Roman ruins of the Colosseum, so it was pretty cool seeing some of that stuff.
Overall, was the road schedule a little easier this time in WWF than it was the first time?
Yeah, like those deals, we do like a 16-day tour in Europe, but then we'd have like a week off, you know, to catch up, and then you'd start back on your regular. Yeah, they modified it at some point because, and then I believe it was like they did 10 days on, 4 days off, 7 days on, 4 days off, or something like that. I can't remember
So
exactly.
they made it a lot easier.
Yeah, they modified it because they figured, it was just. Plus, in the long run, at that point, they were saving money by scheduling stuff more convenient instead of putting 50 guys, 60 guys on airplanes every day. You get rental cars or whatever and stay in a certain area and then fly 2 times on that 14-day run or 3 times or whatever it entailed, instead of putting, at the time, 100 guys on airplanes every single day going 800 different directions or whatever, so.
Now you guys also had a house show run against Hogan and Beefcake. How were they to work?
It was easy, because like with Hogan being able to work the people so much, it was pretty easy matches, pretty easy.
And probably the money was good.
Yeah, that actually was the biggest payoff I ever made, working that WrestleMania at one night with Hogan. So I could have stayed working with him about a year.
Was he easy to work too, like as far as ego goes? Or?
Yeah, no problem. I mean, that's one thing about Hulk. He spent many years working before he became the Hulk, and he understood the business, and yeah, he was easy to work with.
Another guy that you mentioned before that you worked with was Undertaker. What was he like to work with?
It was Undertaker is a great worker, but that was another situation that I explained before. It's hard because with his character, he really can't sell, so it's like you're working overtime to try to beat him down, and it keeps sitting back up. But yeah, Mark's a great worker. I enjoyed working with him.
Yeah, cool guy.
Yeah, real cool.
Okay. How about, you mentioned that Luger, he caused the injury and everything. Was there ever any heat with you and Luger over that?
No, it was just one of those things that happened. I mean, it just happened. And actually, I thought I injured my shoulder, and that's why I never got it checked. And it was just one of those things that happened. So.
Okay. Now, you mentioned how you ended up in WCW before. You went to VK Wallstreet. What did you think of that whole gimmick?
I didn't think it really. I think it was something that Eric Bischoff thought in his mind that would affect Vince, but I didn't really get it, to be honest with you. It didn't really mean nothing to me. So.
Yeah. Were you nervous at all that Vince might take offense to it and you'd burn that bridge? Or?
No, I mean, I didn't think. First of all, I didn't think Eric really liked Vince, and it's ironic that he ended up working for him after all he publicly said against, about him and everything. And it was like his deal to put WWF out of business, but it didn't work out that way. So I think it was like a dig at Vince by saying that VK, but I don't know. I didn't really get it that much. So
yeah, how political was the WCW locker room when you went back there?
It was pretty political, but the difference was they were doing good business at the time. But also, they had just brought a bunch of guys in from the WWF, when Hogan came in and they did the NWO. I mean, it gave the company a boost, obviously.
Yeah.
And it started working for them, so I don't know. I just knew from day one that they weren't really going to do anything with me, so I ended up basically setting up my own deal once they sent me to Japan and stayed over there and kind of stayed out of harm's way, So.
Yeah. So you're looking at it as a paycheck and a way to New Japan.
Yeah, and plus it gave me a whole lot more time off at my house. In between tours, I was off, 2 and 3 weeks at a time, and then I would go back. And it's not easy going to Japan and staying there 3 or 4 weeks, It's a daily. Time goes slow there. Put it that way. It's such a different culture, and it wasn't easy doing that, but at the same time there was a reward when I was off, because I didn't have to go run and do TVs for WCW. They were giving me enough weeks there to basically say, okay, this is where you're at. So.
And you like the whole NWO gimmick in Japan? Or?
Yeah, I thought it was, they were like Chono, Muda, Tenzan, Kojima, Hero. I can't remember Hill's last name, but yeah, it was a great. At first, it was different because I never really worked that much Japan. I'd only been over there on 2 different occasions, but once I got used to it and got to know how the guys worked, you know, it went pretty well. So.
Yeah. What did you think of the Japanese style compared to like the WWF style? It's probably a lot different.
Yeah, it is a lot different, and it's a lot of the Japanese style to me is harder because their philosophy is not to sell. But if you look at who the guys that are really strong in Japan, those are the guys that sell. You know, so I think it's just one of those things that they're stubborn about changing, and you know. But like I said, the NWO one thing is like it's unbelievable. If you watch some of the matches, like the finishes, they got boom, bing, boom, boom, orchestrated. You know, they'll tell you like a 15-minute finish and 20 minutes saves, and so it's different in that aspect, you know. But it's like anything, if you did it, you do it, then you program yourself to think a match that way and just react to it and do, you know, within the match. So it's like a learned process, you know. At first it seems really foreign, but if you do it over and over, then you become, you know, more at ease with it. So it's definitely a different style.
Yeah. Did you have any favorite or least favorite guys to work in Japan?
Yeah, they have really good in the NWO. Tenzan, Kojima. Like I said, I thought we had some great matches when we had the NWO, and then they split the NWO within the NWO. So you, like those 2 kids over there, they're younger guys. I don't know. Do you know who they are? Kojima and Tenzan.
Yeah.
2 great workers, real nice kids too. Just both of them have a lot of fire, and I enjoyed working with. I never worked that much against him, but I worked a lot with him as Chono. I thought he was really good, like his facials, and you know he gets over with the people. He's one of the few Japanese that talk shit to him, and they dislike him because it's out of the normal to him, you know.
Yeah.
And he kind of orchestrated our group, so it was pretty fun working within that realm of that deal over there. Plus they were doing good business. It's kind of like playing on a winning football team. It's a lot more fun than playing on a losing football team. No matter how good an individual's doing, it always makes everybody feel better, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Did you hang out a lot with the Japanese workers outside the ring?
Yeah, not on an every night level, but what they did do in Japan is different, because you'll go to a town and they'll have sponsors, you know, where they take you out to eat after, and they included us, myself and Jeff Farmer and Scott Norton, in a lot of that. So it was pretty cool, because they didn't have to do that. That's, you know, they're the big stars to their people, but they always included us in part of the deal, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Any road or prank stories spring to mind from Japan?
From Japan?
Yeah.
Well, it's different over there because you travel by bus, you know. They have 2 separate buses, and you get on. I don't know. It's hard to say anything really crazy out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
It's just different, you know. You take, like if you go to Hokkaido, I know they're long bus trips, a lot of them, but you take a ferry, you know, and take the thing over, and they get you like a room watching the World Series. It's just different. The bus driver was pretty cool. We used to give him shit all the time, and run out of gas every once in a while, and then really give him shit and stuff like that. But it's just different traveling. You kind of move as a group, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Did you really get any like friendships going with any of the Japanese guys, or was it more like was there anyone in particular that you tried to hang out with?
Well, actually, like, because Jeff Farmer was there on all the tours, we hung out a lot, and one of the referees, he would, like, if we didn't go out with a sponsor or everything, one of the referees, Tayama, he would go with us all the time. So we got pretty close, you know, to being friends with Tayama. We hung out together a lot.
Yeah. How about like Chono and Muda? How would you describe them outside the ring?
Well, they kind of lay low, you know, and I mean, I was always cordial to both of them and them to me. But, you know, and otherwise, if it wasn't a sponsor deal, guys just kind of disappear.
Yeah.
You know, because you're in the ring, in the show together, you know, you're on tour for a month or whatever. You're together on the bus, you're together at the building, you know, so guys kind of just disappear. And basically, like I said, we hung out together with the referee, and because he could help us if we needed to go find this or that or whatever. And he spoke pretty good English, so we, you know, he would take us, and we'd go with him, the three of us, or if Norton was with us, he usually went with us. So.
Okay. How did you think about the way that the whole NWO angle played out over there?
I think they could have got a little bit more mileage out of it, but it just, you know, they did have a pretty good run, and I think what happened when it started dying down in WCW, they kind of started cooling it out over there more so too, you know.
Yeah.
But they had a good run there. They did real good business with that, I think.
Where did the New Japan run end up ending for you?
Well, because of contract, what happened is WCW called me, and I was in Tokyo, and said, you need to be at TV on this, so you need to tell them you're not going to be doing that over there anymore. And they had already had me booked on, I think, 2 or 3 more tours. So I told them, you know, they're going to do something with me over here and blah, blah, blah. Well, I did like 1 TV, and then they didn't do nothing with me. So that was it.
Do you think maybe they were trying to screw with you, or?
No, I think it was just stupid organization, you know. Yeah. That they, you know, you can pretty much tell by watching their TV. They would go this direction one night, the next week they'd be going this direction. There was no continuity to it, you know, no thought plan put into it. So it just ended up, and that's when they started having, you know, all these rumors. This company was going to get sold. This was done. That being bought out, and you know, it just kind of started going downhill, and that was it.
Yeah. Before we get to the downhill part, just a couple of questions about the beginning of WCW when you were there. What were your initial impressions of Eric Bischoff?
I got along with Eric. I mean, I think I didn't know Eric from anybody. I didn't know anything about him, and as I got to know him, he treated me okay. You know, I got along with him. I didn't really have a whole lot to do with him because shortly after I went there, I ended up going to Japan, but I mean, as far as business, we just did our business, and that was it, you know. He let me do my business, and he did his. So.
A lot of people say that he kind of had an ego with him, but you never saw that side of him.
Well, like I say, I wasn't around him a whole lot either, you know. And I saw him, actually a couple times I dealt with him. He was in Japan, so he, you know, actually I got an extension and a new contract when he came to Japan to work. They did something with a show over there, and I got another 2-year contract with him right there that night, and said, you know, this is. But I ended up getting screwed out of my last year of my contract there too, because I didn't. Some guys had a no-cut contract, which I didn't. They could give me 3 months notice or whatever. I forgot even what it was, but anyway, I didn't get paid my last year of that contract. That's why I finished WCW, and they pulled me out of that Japan situation to go here, and then I sat around for 7 months with not having any involvement. So then when things got tight, they said, well, we can cut this guy. This guy's not doing nothing. They were making money off of me going to Japan. So I ended up turning around and going back to Japan and working a couple more years over there.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, what when you heard about Nitro was going to start and go head-to-head with Raw, did you think it was a good idea?
I thought so at the time because, you know, like having Hogan come in and getting more and more guys from the WWF, I thought they'd do okay.
Did you think like Nitro was going to be a huge thing, like as big as it turned out being?
I didn't really think about it that much, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you kind of stayed out of the politics.
Yeah, it kind of played out and did well, so. And I figured, you know, I mean, Turner owned the TV networks. They could do what they want with it. They just had to do it. I mean, they had the resources to do that kind of thing. They just needed to, you know, put everything together and get it done. So.
Yeah. Did you pretty much stay out of the whole political scene and
just
get your check? And
I laid low, you know.
Okay. All right. What did you think when you heard that WCW was going out of business and Vince bought them?
It didn't really affect me at the time because I was already out of there. So it just, I thought that it wouldn't work out for a lot of guys that were still involved with WCW because the way Vince's business was structured, they were getting rid of guys at the time, and there wasn't room for everybody. So it sent a big scramble into the wrestling business.
Now, one thing they did try in 2000 was a varsity club reunion. How come that didn't really work out?
Well, because they did it like half-assed. First of all, I mean, there was nothing involved in it. It was, I don't know. And to do that kind of thing and rehash something, either you have to definitely change it in a different direction. I don't know who came up with doing that idea or what. That's when they pulled me from Japan. So, like I said, they really didn't do nothing with it. So,
yeah,
it wasn't going to go anywhere, basically.
What was morale like in the locker room at that time?
I think it was stressful, big time, because there was a lot of, there's so many people wanting to go so many different directions, And if I can recall, it was pretty stressful.
Yeah.
It was like going back to WCW, leaving Japan for it, and you're going, wow, this isn't a pretty picture.
Are there any fond memories at all from that WCW era?
Not for me, not as far as WCW. I mean, I was happier just being left alone and doing Japan, Basically, it was like, show up there, do your job, get paid, and go home. There wasn't all the political ramifications of everything, so...
Yeah. How about, like, the Savages and the Hogans and the Nash and Halls, all the guys with the political power? Did you just kind of stay away from all that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I got along with all those guys, though, so to me, it wasn't worth getting involved. I mean, I just, like I say, I kept my business doing the Japan deal, and I was happy with that, so basically that's where it fell.
Okay. Now, after WCW and New Japan, you ended up with All Japan. How did you end up there?
Steve Williams called me, and actually at that point, I had talked about going back to New Japan, and Steve said that, this might be a real good opportunity going in there because their company split, and so I ended up going with Steve, so see how it would work out. And got a couple years out of it. I mean, it wasn't a very positive situation because they had so many Japanese guys leave that they brought in other Japanese guys, and they really needed some more Japanese stars to really make it work. I mean, they had Muda started doing some shows for them, and they had Tenryu and Kawada was still there, but it just wasn't enough on their side. And I mean, I probably got 2 years out of it, and then Muda supposedly bought out the company, and I think that's when really they started thinking about getting rid of the Americans because they had to pay them and start using everybody Japanese, but that didn't work out too well either. And then Muda paid Goldberg big money, good money to come over for a couple shows, and I think it kind of put a real strain financially on them, which you can't blame Goldberg. If they're going to pay you, go. But at the time, they didn't have the resources to be paying somebody outside, that kind of money, and it kind of hurt them financially, and at that point, it just got worse and worse and worse to the point where it wasn't worth going, so.
Yeah. What did you think of Mrs. Baba? Did she have any respect from the locker room?
She wasn't around that much. She would just come to the big shows, like in the Budokan. So some guys liked her and some guys didn't. Obviously, all the Japanese guys that left didn't like her, didn't get along with her, or whatever. But like myself, I worked there a couple years and didn't really have a problem with her. I just went in and did my deal and left. So
Yeah. Were there any favorite or least favorite guys to work in All Japan?
I don't know. Yeah, Kawada was hard to work, I thought.
Why is that?
Just his style, I guess. You know, I had a harder time working with him, but it could be just me. Some of them just have a different style too. It's hard to work with them. You know, I mean, it's so different, and they're not willing to adapt to anything else. And my idea of smacking somebody and getting smacked in the face with 15 elbows isn't a match. So, you know, you can go outside and get in a street fight and do that if you want, but it just depends on the individual.
And then recently in Japan, you did a retirement match. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, I went over it was IWA, and I had done one other tour for them and wasn't going to come back, and they suggested that I come back and do a retirement match because I guess I had, you know, gone there like 4 years or 5 years and worked. So it worked out pretty good. They did actually, it was pretty cool. They did like a ceremony and after the match and stuff, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah. What's your plans now? Are you looking to get back in the wrestling things?
No, I'm pretty much done.
Yeah.
I have one like independent show booked up. It's in Tampa, Florida, but I'm really not active in it and don't really care to do too much more wrestling, to be honest with you. I'm just had enough.
Yeah. Now, looking back at the beginning of your career, you weren't really a fan getting in. Was there ever a time in the wrestling business, as you know, a lot of guys become wrestlers because they get off on the crowd reactions and that kind of stuff. Did that ever happen for you, or was it more just a job?
No, it was definitely a job. I mean, I've been involved with sports since I was 8 years old, and the crowd reaction, no, that didn't get it for me. I did it to try to make money at it. That was my motivation. So. And actually, the opportunities as you get older become less and less in a sports business. So when the money stops, it's time to get out. So
yeah, were you happy with the money? I talked to some guys that were. Kamal was very bitter when he did one of these interviews. One man gang felt he should have been paid more over the years.
Yeah, I mean, there's always room to get paid more. I mean, no matter what you're making, because definitely there's always room to be paid more. But at the same time, I was pretty fortunate to making some decent money. So, I mean, you can sit here and complain all day, but I mean, you have to make that decision at some point. Am I making enough to stay in this, or am I not? So, I mean, that's just one of those situations. I mean, anybody always wants to be paid more money, and there were times in WWF and WCW that you could have been paid more money, I'm sure, but that's just the nature of it, and it's not the same as like the NFL, or they can make a champion or break a champion in this. And secondly, the guys will never unionize in this kind of sport, which would give guys some stability, but it'll never happen.
Why do you think a union can never happen?
Well, because in this business, they can take this guy here and make him a champion. Now, in football, you have to, first of all, be good enough to get to this stage to go to college. Then you have to be good enough to get to this stage to get drafted in the NFL. And these guys have legitimate power where they can't write on paper who's going to be Super Bowl champion. But you can write on paper who's going to be your tag team champion, who's going to be your world champion. It's just, and what happens in that kind of situation, that somebody can be made through political ranks. Well, if they're world champion or tag team champion, and somebody comes up and says, "Hey, we need you to join the union." Well, I'm not joining the union, because if I join the union, I'm going to get fired. And that's basically the stronghold of this type of, it's an entertainment business, which I don't ever see it happening. I know it's been, over the years, heard people talk about situations that they've tried to make it happen, but unless every guy that's involved in that company says, okay, this is the way it is, then it'll never happen.
Do you have any regrets with your career?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has some, but as a whole, I mean, it's been interesting, and I got to go and do and see a lot of places I've never would have seen, and I mean, I'm sure there are instances I would regret, but you know, as a whole, I can't complain.
Okay. Just to close it out, there's a few names that you mentioned that we didn't really talk about. Just I'll throw them at you and just give a thought or two about what kind of person they were and what they were like to work. Butch Reed.
Butch was cool. He showed me, like I said, took the time out of his schedule to come down and work out with me and show me some. He was cool.
How about the Briscoes?
Cool guys. Taught me a lot.
What were some of the main things they taught you?
They talked about, you know, the psychology of the business a lot and the do's and don'ts. You know, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that, you know. And I don't know, just plus they were fun to be around. We laughed a lot and, you know, had fun. So
how about Dino Bravo?
I never was around Dino that much, just as a business, because he was part owner and really never, other than the building, you know, really never. He treated me fine though. I mean, never personally around him. So
okay. The McMahon family besides Vince.
I liked them. I mean, they're like Shane was. I know Shane since he was young, really, because the first time I was up there, you know, in '85, end of '84, Shane was still pretty young, and he was full of it then, you know. So I mean, we used to yell at him, and Barry Windham told me this story, that Rock used to come in the dressing room, and we used to hang out with the Rock, and I'm trying to remember because his dad, Rocky Johnson, you know, it was so long ago, but I guess Rock had made a comment to him that he remembered Barry and I, because Rock would have been pretty young when we were up and doing the U.S. Express, so he gave Barry a compliment. I said it was pretty cool.
Cool. How about Vince Russo?
The only time I was around Vince Russo was when I first went back to WCW, and it couldn't have been like a 3-week period, and a lot of guys disliked him. I can't tell you that much. Myself, I wasn't around the guy, but I know that he either was the guys liked him or they hated him. So, like I said, he was around there for a little bit, and then trying to take it a whole different direction. But that was the time I went over to Japan. So,
Scott Hall and Kevin Nash.
I got along with both of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm actually, Barry and I were probably the first guys that Scott Hall ever got in a ring with down in Florida.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in
what was he like
84.
back then?
He was a big old boy, you know. I mean, he wanted to be a wrestler, so it took. I think Scott went to Minnesota after that, or did some German, but it took to me longer than I thought Scott to get in a big part in the wrestling business. But he ended up, you know, towards the end of his career, got in a huge spot in it. And Kevin too was just starting out in WCW, so I got along with them both.
Randy Savage.
I like Randy. Randy's actually a pretty good friend of mine.
Really?
Yeah,
is he as crazy as people say?
He's.
Is that more gimmick, would you say?
I mean, he does his gimmick. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I know when Randy went through his divorce, Steve Kern and myself and Randy hung out a lot, so I got to know Randy pretty good.
Yeah. How about Don Morocco?
He's a beast. He was actually one of the first guys that I saw that I really liked. What happened when I was in college, Dick Beyer talked to me about getting into, do you know who Dick Beyer is?
The Destroyer.
The Destroyer, yeah. He talked to me about getting into wrestling. He said, start watching wrestling. And so that's when Vince, I guess, was on still UHF channels in New York, in the part around Syracuse or wherever. And so I started watching him on Friday night. And Morocco was doing the beach bum deal. And I go, man, that's pretty cool. I liked his gimmick, you know. So that Morocco was, and then a few years later, I'm riding around in the car with him, and You know, so it was pretty cool.
How was he to travel with?
Well, he's a beast. He's a beast.
All right, 3 more. Ricky Steamboat.
Steamboat actually helped me a lot too. When I went to Charlotte, Ricky was he was going to open a gym, and he had all his equipment in a barn, and I did an angle where I guess it was Leroy Brown hurt my neck, so I wasn't supposed to be in the gym and stuff, and I ended up getting to know Ricky and Jay real good, because they used to go out and train in this barn that he has equipment at. So I started going training with him in the mornings, you know, and got to know him real well. So they were both cool to me.
And you worked out in that barn just to not break kayfabe and work out in a public place?
Yeah. Back in the day, yeah, you had to.
Yeah. Sergeant Slaughter.
Slaughter I worked with, he taught me a lot. I never was around Sarge. I always got along with him, but never, you know, ride, because they used to do that down in Charlotte, that Army gimmick. And they had the Army limo, and Kernoodle and his crew used to travel, but I got along with Sarge good.
Okay, and finally Andre the Giant.
Andre is one of the first live matches I ever met. I met Andre at, and this was like 81, end of 81, before 82 when I first started. Before I went to Germany, I started riding up to Montreal on the weekends and going with Bayer, and I met Andre up there. Yeah, he was different. I mean, as far as what, you know, people just freaked out by him, you know.
Yeah, was he as grumpy as his reputation?
Yeah, he got towards the end there. He got grumpy, and one of the first experiences I actually had before, this is years earlier, with I guess it was '84. Andre used to come down to Florida and wrestle, like, you know, a couple times a year, and Barry had a big old Bronco, and we'd pick Andre up and take him to the shows with us, you know. And it was a trip, because you heard about him, but Andre was just, okay, we need some beer. Go in and buy 3 cases of beer and put them in the back seat of the Bronco, you know. And just there, boom. So,
was there
a trip.
One final question. What was your favorite place to work?
I think Berlin, Germany, yeah.
That was really way early in your career?
Earlier?
Or was that the early in Germany, or when you went there on tour with WWF?
Yeah, that was in WWF.
Okay.
No, we never went.
Was that your favorite promotion, WWF, to work for?
Yeah,
at that
I
time?
think so, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. I definitely got treated the best business-wise, you know, I think.
And that was the I.R.S. run, right?
Well, even the first run, you know, I mean, to me, if you could do the job, they give you an opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Anything in closing you want to say to the fans?
No, just good luck, and thanks for all these years, man.
Cool. Thank you very much.
All right.